In the spring of 2011, in the quiet, affluent neighborhood of Nantes, France, 5 members of the same family simply vanished. No goodbye messages. No forwarding address. Just silence. But this wasn't a family that had run away together. This was something far more sinister. What police would eventually uncover beneath the terrace of their elegant home would shock the nation and spark one of the most intensive manhunts in French history. This is the story of Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, a man who seemed to have it all, and the unspeakable act that would make him France's most wanted fugitive. To understand this case, we need to go back to the beginning. Xavier Pierre-Marie Dupont de Ligonnès was born in 1961 into what many would consider French aristocracy. The de in his surname indicated noble lineage, and Xavier grew up in a world of privilege, tradition, and expectations. He was educated at prestigious institutions and seemed destined for success. In 1989, Xavier married Agnès Hodanger, a woman from a similarly upper-middle-class background. Together, they built what appeared to be an ideal family. They had 4 children: Arthur, born in 1990, Thomas, born in 1991, Anne, born in 1993, and Benoît, born in 1996. The family also had 2 Labrador dogs, completing the picture of domestic bliss. By all outward appearances, the Dupont de Ligonnès family lived a comfortable, even enviable life. They resided at 55 Boulevard Robert Schumann in Nantes, a stately home in one of the city's most desirable neighborhoods. The children attended Catholic schools. The family was involved in their local church. They seemed to embody traditional French bourgeois values. But beneath this polished surface, cracks were beginning to form. Xavier had struggled professionally for years. He had bounced between various business ventures, none of which gained traction. He worked in sales, tried his hand at starting companies, but nothing seemed to stick. Despite his aristocratic background and education, financial success eluded him. The pressure of maintaining the family's lifestyle, of living up to his heritage, of providing for 5 people in an expensive city, it was mounting. By 2011, the situation had become dire. Xavier was deeply in debt. The family's financial problems were no longer something that could be hidden or managed. They were drowning, and Xavier couldn't see a way out. But there was something else troubling about Xavier, something that those who knew him had begun to notice. He had become increasingly withdrawn, paranoid even. He spoke of conspiracies, of being watched, of threats that others couldn't see. His behavior had grown erratic. And then, in early April 2011, something shifted. Xavier made a decision. It was a decision so cold, so calculated, and so horrifying that even seasoned investigators would struggle to comprehend it. The first sign that something was wrong came in mid-April 2011. Friends and family members of the Dupont de Ligonnès family began receiving strange messages. The children weren't at school. Agnès wasn't responding to calls. The house on Boulevard Robert Schumann seemed abandoned. But Xavier had prepared for this. In the days leading up to the family's disappearance, he had crafted an elaborate cover story. He sent letters and emails to the children's schools, explaining that the family was moving to Australia. He told friends that he had been offered a prestigious job abroad with the American Drug Enforcement Administration, working undercover. The family, he claimed, had to relocate immediately and secretly. They couldn't say goodbye. They couldn't leave contact information. It was all part of the mission. To some, this story seemed plausible. Xavier came from a background where such connections might be possible. His father had been a military officer. Xavier himself often spoke of international business dealings. Maybe he had finally found success. But to others, something didn't feel right. The suddenness of it all. The lack of proper goodbyes. The secretive nature of the departure. Australia? The DA? It seemed too convenient, too fantastic. As days turned into weeks, concern grew. Agnès' mother, Geneviève Hodanger, was particularly worried. Her daughter wouldn't just disappear without a word. She filed a missing persons report on April 21, 2011. When police arrived at 55 Boulevard Robert Schumann, they found the house locked and apparently empty. But they also found something that immediately raised red flags. There was a foul smell emanating from the property. On April 21, exactly 3 weeks after the family was last seen, investigators obtained a warrant and entered the home. What they found inside would confirm everyone's worst fears. The house appeared relatively normal at first glance. It was tidy, organized, nothing obviously out of place. But as investigators moved through the property, they noticed something strange. The terrace at the back of the house had been recently disturbed. The ground looked uneven, and that smell was strongest here. They began to dig. Within hours, they made a discovery that would horrify France. Buried beneath the terrace, wrapped in sheets and covered with lime, were 5 bodies. Agnès Dupont de Ligonnès, age 48. Arthur, age 21. Thomas, age 18. Anne, age 16. Benoît, age 13. The entire family, except for Xavier. Each victim had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber rifle, while they slept, in their own beds. The 2 family dogs had also been killed, but Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès was nowhere to be found. As news of the murders spread, France was gripped by shock and horror. This wasn't a crime of passion, a moment of rage. This was methodical. Planned. Executed with chilling precision. Investigators began piecing together Xavier's movements in the weeks before and after the murders. What they discovered painted a picture of a man who had been planning this for some time. In January 2011, 3 months before the murders, Xavier had ordered a .22 caliber rifle. He purchased it legally, claiming he needed it for sport shooting. He also bought a silencer, though records show he struggled to properly install it. In March, he purchased large quantities of lime, garden supplies, and heavy-duty garbage bags. He bought sleeping pills and sedatives. He acquired sheets and tarps. Between April 3 and 4, investigators believe Xavier murdered his entire family. The evidence suggests he killed them in their sleep, one by one, over the course of 1 or 2 nights. He likely sedated them first to ensure they wouldn't wake during the attack. After the murders, Xavier spent several days in the house with the bodies. He carefully wrapped each victim, dragged them to the terrace, and buried them. He cleaned the house meticulously, removing evidence, arranging items to make it appear the family had simply moved away. But Xavier had also been busy creating his escape plan. He had withdrawn money from multiple accounts. He sold family valuables. He prepared documents and identification. And he crafted that elaborate story about moving to Australia for a secret DEA job. On April 11, 2011, 1 week after the murders, Xavier left his home for the last time. Security cameras captured him at a local hotel in Nantes, where he spent one night. He paid in cash. He was alone. Over the next several days, Xavier went on what investigators would later call a last tour of France. He visited Roquebrune-sur-Argens in the south of France, an area he had known as a child. He checked into a hotel there on April 12, again paying cash and using his real name. He seemed calm, collected, normal. On April 14, he was captured on surveillance footage at various locations in Roquebrune-sur-Argens. He visited restaurants, went for walks, appeared to be on a leisurely vacation. But there was something haunting about these images. This was a man who had just murdered his entire family, and he was acting as if nothing had happened. The last confirmed sighting of Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès was on April 14, 2011, at the Formula One Hotel in Roquebrune-sur-Argens. He checked out the next morning. His car was found abandoned in the parking lot of the hotel on April 15. His cell phone was inside, turned off. His wallet was gone. So were his identification papers and passport. And then, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès vanished. From the moment police discovered the bodies, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès became France's most wanted man. His photograph was everywhere. Newspapers, television, billboards. The entire nation was looking for him. But where had he gone? Map of France and surrounding areas. Investigators had several theories. The location where his car was abandoned, Roquebrune-sur-Argens, was significant. It's near the Mediterranean coast, just miles from the Italian border. Did Xavier cross into Italy? Did he take a boat? Did he have help? Some investigators believed Xavier had planned his escape meticulously, just as he had planned the murders. He had connections, knowledge of multiple languages, and enough cash to stay hidden for a while. Perhaps he had established a new identity somewhere abroad. Others theorized something darker. Given Xavier's increasingly paranoid behavior before the murders, his obvious mental deterioration, some wondered if he had planned to kill himself after murdering his family. The area where his car was abandoned was rugged, with forests and mountains. Search teams combed the wilderness looking for a body, believing Xavier might have taken his own life. Massive searches were conducted. Dogs, helicopters, divers in nearby waterways. Nothing. No body. No trace. It was as if Xavier had simply ceased to exist. As months turned into years, the investigation went international. Interpol issued a red notice. There were reported sightings in countries around the world. Italy, Switzerland, Spain. Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès appeared to suffer from what psychologists call status anxiety. Born into a family with aristocratic pretensions, he carried the weight of expectations. He was supposed to succeed, to uphold the family name, to provide. But reality fell far short of these expectations. His business ventures consistently failed. His debts mounted. By 2011, he was facing financial ruin. But more than that, he was facing public humiliation. For a man like Xavier, whose identity was so tied to his family name and social status, this failure was existential. Forensic psychologists who have studied the case point to several concerning factors in Xavier's psychology. First, there was his apparent inability to accept or process failure. Rather than acknowledge his financial problems, seek help, or declare bankruptcy, he seemed to enter a state of denial and fantastical thinking. His stories about working for the DEA, about secret government missions, these weren't just lies to cover his tracks after the murders. Evidence suggests he had been telling similar stories for years, creating an alternate reality where he was important, successful, necessary. Second, there was his increasing isolation and paranoia. In the months before the murders, Xavier had become more withdrawn. He spoke of being watched, of conspiracies, of threats. Some have speculated he may have been experiencing a psychotic break or the onset of a paranoid disorder. But perhaps most chilling was Xavier's apparent belief that his family's existence was tied to his own identity and success. In his mind, if he couldn't provide for them, if he couldn't maintain their lifestyle and status, then perhaps they were better off not existing at all. This type of thinking is seen in cases of familicide, where a family annihilator believes that killing their loved ones is somehow protective or merciful. Of course, this thinking is profoundly distorted. It's an act of ultimate control, of narcissism, where the perpetrator cannot separate their own identity from those of their family members. What makes the Dupont de Ligonnès case particularly disturbing is the level of premeditation involved. This wasn't an impulsive act. Xavier planned the murders for months. He acquired weapons, purchased supplies, created alibis. And after the murders, he spent days in the house with the bodies, methodically covering his tracks. In France, Xavier has been tried in absentia for the murders. In 2015, he was formally convicted and sentenced to life in prison for the premeditated murder of his wife, 4 children, and 2 dogs. The sentence awaits his capture. More than a decade after the murders, many questions remain unanswered. The biggest, of course, is where is Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès? Is he alive? If so, how has he managed to evade capture for so long? With modern surveillance, facial recognition technology, international cooperation between law enforcement, it seems almost impossible that someone as wanted as Xavier could remain hidden. Some investigators believe he's dead, that he killed himself shortly after abandoning his car in 2011. The area around Roquebrune-sur-Argens is rugged, with dense forests and mountains. A body could remain undiscovered for years, perhaps forever. Others believe he's alive, possibly living under a new identity in a country with a large expatriate community where someone with European features wouldn't stand out. South America is often mentioned, particularly countries with less robust law enforcement cooperation. There are other mysteries too. Did Xavier act alone? Some find it hard to believe that one man could execute such a plan without help. Who helped him acquire some of the items he purchased? Did anyone assist in his escape? And what about motive? Yes, financial ruin was a factor, but was that enough to drive a man to murder his entire family? Were there other issues in the marriage? Were there secrets that have never come to light? Perhaps the saddest question is what Agnès and the children knew, if anything, in their final moments. Did they suspect? Were they afraid? Or did Xavier, as evidence suggests, ensure they were sedated and killed them mercifully in their sleep, if such a word can be used in this context? The victims in this case are often overshadowed by the mystery of Xavier's disappearance. But it's important to remember them as individuals. Agnès was a devoted mother, active in her community and church. Arthur was a young man just beginning his adult life. Thomas was a teenager with dreams and potential. And was a bright 16-year-old. Benoît was just 13 years old, a child. They deserved to live. They deserved futures. And they deserved justice. The Dupont de Ligonnès case remains one of the most baffling and disturbing in modern French criminal history. It's a case that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the facades people maintain, about the pressures of social expectations, and about how far someone might go when they feel they've lost everything. The house at 55 Boulevard Robert Schumann still stands, though it has changed hands several times since 2011. It's hard to imagine what it must be like to live in a place where such horror occurred. The street is quiet, affluent, normal. Life goes on. But for those who knew the family, for the extended relatives who lost 5 loved ones in one unspeakable act, life will never be normal again. The trauma reverberates still. As of today, Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès remains at large. He would now be in his early 60s. If he's alive, he's aged. His appearance would have changed. But somewhere, someone might recognize him. Someone might hold the key to finally bringing this case to a close. French authorities have made it clear that this case will never be closed until Xavier is found, dead or alive. The investigation continues. Tips still come in. Leads are still followed. If you have any information about the whereabouts of Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès, you're urged to contact Interpol or French law enforcement immediately. The family of Agnès, Arthur, Thomas, Anne, and Benoît deserve closure. They deserve justice. In a case with so many questions, one thing is certain: on a quiet street in Nantes, in the spring of 2011, a man made a choice that destroyed not just 5 lives, but countless others. The ripples of that choice continue to spread, and until Xavier Dupont de Ligonnès is found, the wounds cannot truly begin to heal.